Alright guys, here we are on part 6. So this video is just going to be a hodgepodge of doing some various things to get this thing ready to go on the road. So I've been working on putting the brakes back on it. So I got the e-brake brakes on here. I got the axles, I guess you would call these, in the rear with all the bearings. I took the seals off the bearings and put some new grease in there. I got my fender wells undercoated, got my coilovers in there, and then I started noticing some clearance issues that I got. First being the upper control arm. I don't have very much room in there. And then if you look down under here, where I had made my sway bar mount here, it's way too tall. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting a bend right in there in the pipe. I've already got it marked on both sides. And then this guy here, I need to cut this shorter, and then I'm actually going to drill this into the pipe. So this is just welded on there for the heim joint. I'm going to drill and tap into the pipe and then cut that shorter, because if I put the heim joint on there as it is, the sway bar actually touches the bottom of that, I don't know, what's it, inner axle? I'd have to look up what you even call that. So that's what I'm going to be working on today, and then get this thing as close to aligned as I can align it. There's what the rest of it looks like underneath here. Got the other side done as well. And then before I pull these out, let me show you what's going on inside the car. Or not what's going on, but the completed work of the strut tower relocation. So I smothered those with seam sealer. That is actually the factory paint color for this car. So when I painted it the organic green, it was very similar to the green that was already in there. So I had a can of touch-up paint that I just painted, primed and painted those, and then I got some sheet metal and just used seam sealer and just glued to fill in that hole right there. It's all dirty and dusty in here. I'll have to clean all that out. But for right now, I'm gonna jump on these control arms. All right, for the job of trying to put a bend in that control arm, which probably would have been easier to do before I built them. So I'm going to use this Harbor Freight pipe bender. I bought this thing, dude, like 20 years ago, and I've maybe used it once or twice. One of the biggest problems people have with these is they try to bend like exhaust tubing or different diameters of pipe, and this thing is only good for basically a Schedule 40 pipe. So here's a piece of the pipe that I use to build these control arms. And if you take the die, and if you look here, well, let me spin this thing around. If you look there, that die is the exact size of that pipe. If it had any kind of a gap on the side, which tubing, as you guys probably know, tubing is measured in the outside diameter, pipe is by inside diameter. So if I'd had a piece of 1-inch tube in there, it would have had a gap around the edge. And then when you go to bend it in here, it kinks. And once it kinks, you're done. So I'm going to stick that guy in there, and I'm not going to put too much of a bend in there, just 10 degrees or so, but I'm going to put a straight edge across the top and then measure it. I'll get it in here and start trying to bend it, and then I'll show you how I'm going to measure it up. I changed my camera setting back to 30 frames per second because 60 If you guys seen, yeah, it looked a lot clearer, but I couldn't get close enough to what I was trying to show you. So I got my control arm up in here, centered. I put some just some microfiber pieces on there just so it doesn't get the paint on there, even though it would probably just smash the fire out of those things. And then I just laid me a straight edge across here, and it's roughly 4.5 inches. Is I'm probably going to push this thing up. I don't know, I'll start with a 1/2 inch and see what that gets us. It actually didn't do too bad. Those little microfiber towels kept all that paint from getting smeared on these. So let me stick this one back in the car and see what kind of clearance we got. Well, they always say a little bit goes a long way. And just that little 1/2 inch bend gave me all kinds of good clearance in there. So I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then probably put a little bit of a bend in that lower, and then we'll work on trying to align this thing. Show you guys what I ended up doing to fix this differential. So if you remember early on, I was talking about all these metal pieces that I found inside the bottom of the differential when I opened the case up, and these ended up being the they're like a shim washer, thrust washer. They go on the end of these spider gears here. And so what Mitsubishi had done, unique to the 3000 GT and the Stealth, is they machined the end of this rectangle, and then these washers sat on here, and it was basically designed so that these wouldn't spin. These would sit stagnant, and then these spider gears, as some people call them, rotated inside of them. So I think what happened was when this thing snapped the axle on the driver's side, is this thing tried to lock up in limited slip, and it just wasn't strong enough to hold all the engine torque, and it ended up scoring these, or basically trying to weld them to the gears, and then that's what caused them all to break. And I think once the first one broke, the rest broke. Well, those are discontinued. So what I ended up having to do, by luck of the draw, is I found these guys, which came out of a Suzuki Samurai, like a 88 Suzuki Samurai. They happen to be the same outside diameter. They just happen to have a hole in the middle. Oh, and they also have the same concave as the back of this spider gear does. So since the rest of the world uses a round hole and Mitsubishi decided not to, I took this to the machine shop, and I had to have them just round these edges down just a little bit so that I could slide the gear on here. And it takes 2 washers. These are 1 millimeter thick. The original factory ones were 2 millimeters thick. So by putting 2 of these on each side, then I get the same clearance of the factory one, and I think I paid like $15 for 4, so I got like 30 bucks in these guys. The other thing I ran into was the shims. So I got these shims here. If you look at the manual, it tells you down inside of here, let me pull this gear out because I already set one down in here, that you're supposed to put a 31 thousandths is what goes in this side here, which is what they call the right side. This is a 30 thousandths. So I ended up buying a spring steel sheet that had various thicknesses, and then I had these plasma cut it out. So again, these are discontinued, these shims that you can't get in this size. It's a 38 inside diameter and a 63 OD. I had some shims cut, and then so this is a 30 where they recommended a 31 thousandths. So this guy goes in here. Then you put your spider gears inside there, So again, all of this has already been cleaned up and already pre-oiled. This is kind of a pain to get in there because the hole is so small. Can't really get your hands all the way down in there, but let me drop this guy down in there. All right, it's in position. Then this is your VSU, viscous something or whatever. And what happens is when this thing gets twisted opposite direction, it expands and it puts these gears in a bind, and then that's what gives you your limited slip. So now that I got this guy in there, then what happens is you end up having to put all of this together and measure your clearance inside of here. And you need to be, I think it's between 12 thousandths and 35 thousandths. I'm not sure. I'm sure anybody watching this is not going to be rebuilding one of these, because $500 you can just go buy a used one and call it a day. So then that shim goes on there, this bolts together, and then there's a test you got to do to make sure, which I've already tested this and it works. I just took it apart to show you guys that in case anybody asks, hey, how did you ever get your differential put back together? And that's how. Just took a little ingenuity and some research and talking to some machinists, and there you go. So let's move on to the next project. And now we're moving on to aligning the rear end. So I bought these handy dandy aligners off of Amazon. They're fairly cheap, under 50 bucks. And what they do is they connect to your brake rotor on both sides, and then you have a tape measure on each end, and then that helps you set your toe. The only downside to using them is they don't tell you if your wheel is actually straight. It just tells you if your heel and toe are the same. But especially like on a rear end like this, you could actually have both tires kind of pointing off to the same side, but they would be the same distance apart, heel toe. So what I ended up doing was I ran a string off of the front end on both sides down to the back, and got this side, the passenger side, completely straight with the front tire. And then, well, before I did all that, I stuck a level under the car, and I got the car level front to back. Took the level and then put it across my subframe side to side and made sure the car's level. So right now the car is sitting 100% level, or as close to level as I can get it. Then I got the heel toe, or just the toe, lined up on the passenger side. And then I worked on, I got this level here to get the camber as close to 0 as possible. So basically this is my starting point. One of the other things I did as well is I measured where this wheel is going to sit in this fender well. I actually did all of that after I leveled the car and not before I messed with the heel and the toe. But basically measured off of the body of the inside of the car at a set point on both sides, and then where it fell into the center, which on this is 18 inches. And then I went on the other side and adjusted it back to be the exact same. So the wheels I'm running are 26 inches, so 13 inches is center. Inside of this fender well here, it's basically, the wheel is centered. It's within a 1/4 inch of being centered in between the fender well. Did the same on the other side. And I also set the coilovers so that the center point here to here is about where it would be if the car was sitting on the ground. So this is basically going to be my final wheel location. I got the toe and the camber, and then I guess it would be the caster, all set up on this one right here. And then now what I'm doing is having to adjust the driver's side to match. And I'll just show you here real quick. The camber on this side is still leaned in just a little bit. Another area I measured is I put a straight edge across here and then measured how far in the wheel hub was, and this one is sitting about 3/8 of an inch in compared to the other side, but the toe is off on this one. So if you look inside of here, you know, as I'm like 65 and about a half or so, and then if you come back here, I'm about 65 and a quarter on the back side. So I have to bring this out this way. So I'm already centered between here to match the other side. I've measured from here to here and I'm the same. So once I bring this back out, which by doing that, I'm going to have to, so this thing is leaned in just a little bit. So I will adjust the top out to get it to where it is basically as close to zero camber as possible. Then I will check the heel toe, and I may have to adjust both of these top and bottom control arms out to get this whole thing swung out. And once I have all of that done, then I'll finally come back with my straight edge again to make sure that I have the same distance between here as I do on the other side. And then that should get me as pretty close to aligned as I can get here without having this thing on an alignment rack. But I wanted to get all of that done and then get all of my ball joints and 4-link connectors all locked down. And then next will be putting in the differential. So that's what I'm moving on to next. And there is the fancy finished semi-rebuilt differential. Tore it all apart, sandblasted it, did the power steering pump delete on the top, repainted the mounts, put window urethane in them. This thing is already checked out for all the right clearances, backlash, new seals. It's ready to go into her forever home. I told you wrong on the last part where I showed you this differential. The clearance inside the limited slip is 12 10,000ths, not 12 thousandths to 35 10,000ths. So, but that is all in spec, so we'll see how she does. Let me roll her in here and stick some bolts in. And there it is. Rear diff is in place. All that is left is axles, drive shaft, and transmission. So that's what we're going to hit up on the next video. So we're going to end this one off now. Hope you like what you're seeing. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next one.